The first moment I actually knew what was going on, I was sitting in my living room scrolling on my phone and I saw the news. Charles Spencer, the man who treasured the memory of his sister Princess Diana like a dragon guards its gold, had finally spoken. His response to a huge new Netflix offer was simply 4 tiny words. But those 4 words, not a rejection, they were a quake. And really, when you know all that transpired leading up to it, you realize he had no choice. He could not have said anything different. There was nothing else to be said. This is a man who has spent almost 3 decades saying no. No to millions of dollars, no big-name directors, no to legacy projects. She turned down every single producer who came knocking since 1997 when the world lost the people's princess. He has become the quiet guardian of one of the most treasured and emotionally loaded collections of memories in modern history. We're talking about Diana's secret journals, the pages she wrote for herself alone late at night when nobody was looking. These are home movies no one outside the Spencer family has ever seen, footage of a real woman smiling and sobbing and being thoroughly human. We're talking about private images of occasions that were not meant to be caught on camera. And Charles Spencer has refused to open that vault to anyone. Not in cash, not for glory, not for a penny in the world. But then the offer came from his own nephew's production house. Diana's youngest son, Prince Harry, planned to film a documentary on Netflix. A biggie, 30th anniversary tribute to his mother, arriving in 2027. It sounded lovely on paper. A son's epic cinematic love letter to his lost mother. And Netflix apparently loved it right away. They were willing to spend a significant budget on it. It felt like a sure thing, the kind of endeavor that would break records and win prizes. Everyone was hyped. Everyone except the man at Althorpe, the Spencer family seat where Diana grew up, where she played as a little girl, where she is buried now on a tiny island in the middle of a tranquil lake. Thing is, the proposition was not simply a request to film a documentary. It was demanding everything. They wanted to see the house proper, where Diana ran when she was a child, the lake where she had sought times of solitude apart from the world, the island that is her resting place, a place of pilgrimage for millions of mourning admirers. But it was not all. They wanted to get their hands on Diana's own handwritten diaries. They were pages she wrote for herself, never meant for an audience or for publication. They wanted the home movies that have never been released publicly, the real Diana that no one outside the family has ever seen. Without those aspects, the documentary would be just another history piece, a rehash of the same old clips that every network has been using for 3 decades. With them, it would be the quintessential Diana film of this century, the holy grail of the royal documentary. And then there was the story they wanted to convey, the aspect that made the pitch completely appealing to the folks selling it, and completely devastating to the men reading it. They sought to draw a straight line, an unambiguous link, between Diana's struggle with the royal establishment and Meghan Markle's war with the same forces. The goal was to cast Meghan as the modern-day continuation of Diana's story, the 21st century version of the woman who wouldn't be silent. Diana's halo, her soul, her battle, everything legally passed to another head. Imagine what Charles Spencer saw when he read that. He had spent years seeing bits of Diana's jewelry appear on Meghan at high-profile events. The butterfly earrings, the Cartier watch, the golden armlets, every single time in a moment where camera coverage was not only conceivable but a sure thing. He saw the 2021 Oprah interview, which was practically beat for beat from the architecture of Diana's own 1995 panorama confession. The soft lighting, the sympathetic interviewer, the feeling of secrets being let out into the air. He had seen their Netflix documentary series in which the couple portrayed themselves as victims of the same mechanism that killed Diana. And now, after all that, they demanded the vault, the diaries, the island itself, the original ones. All to coronate a successor. Of course he said what he did. Honestly, I'm surprised he restrained himself to 4 words. That was not the disdain of aristocrats. 28 years of anguish and remorse and expiation compacted into a single statement. To grasp how absolute Charles Spencer's silence has been, you have to travel back to a wound most royal journalism never touches. And that is the key that opens everything else. It has been long rumored that it was Charles Spencer who originally introduced his sister to Martin Bashir, the journalist behind that infamous 1995 Panorama interview. The world now knows the identical interview was obtained through fake documents and intentional psychological manipulation. Fake bank statements, counterfeit proof surveillance, fabricated evidence of treason, all of it geared to convince an isolated, frightened lady that everyone around her was an enemy and the only safe thing for her to do was sit in front of a camera and bleed for the nation. Diana's vulnerability was not accidental to that broadcast. It was her byproduct of vulnerability, and her younger brother, in some tales, had inadvertently held the door open. Years later, when the complete truth about how the interview was organized eventually came to light, it reportedly hit Charles Spencer like a landslip, because it meant that he, guiltless though he was, innocent though he was, had had a part in one of the deepest exploitations of her misery that had ever been. Think of what that does to a human being. You spend your whole adult life thinking you're your sister's guardian. You stood before 2 billion witnesses in Westminster Abbey and told the world that you would protect her sons from the machinery that hurt her. And then you found out that the most psychologically destructive media event of her last years walked through a door you unlocked. Everything since, by all accounts, has been an act of atonement. The sealed records, the refusal, 1 decade after the next, the choice to bury Diana at Althorpe and not provide her institution a resting place, the secret home movie. The handwritten diaries no one outside the Spencer family has ever read. Charles Spencer has been paying penance, ensuring that nothing like Panorama can ever happen to Diana again, even in death, even now, some 30 years later. And in doing so, he has done something spectacular. He has kept Diana's mystery. There is a private Diana that the world has never tasted, the actual, unguarded, whole human side of herself, and she lives because one man has been saying no for 30 years. So when a courier shows up with a proposal to package that very mystery as a streaming product, with a narrative that frames a new figure as her spiritual successor, the response starts to look less like contempt and more like the only possible answer a man in his position could give. If you want to see why this particular documentary was so terribly important to the Sussex operation, you have to take an honest look at the health of their media empire in early 2026. The $100 million Netflix deal, the 5-year pact that funded their California dream, was hanging by a thread. The main effort to steady the ship was the lifestyle series with Love Meghan. It was the iceberg, rather. The reviews were in, thick, fast, and harsh. It received 4 stars from the Evening Standard and still managed to be a snark at the exit. The Times gave it 2 stars and labeled it with a phrase that clearly deserves to be retained: boring. The Daily Telegraph likewise gave it 2 stars, calling it an exercise in narcissism, full of lavish breakfasts, celebrity friends, and commercial promotions. And then there was The Guardian. Here, listen up, because this is important. The Guardian is not a loyal paper. It is a paper that has long called for reform of the monarchy, and has regularly and strongly decried the treatment of Meghan over the years. Of all the outlets in British print media, The Guardian was predisposed to appreciate the show. They gave it 1 star. One critic even claimed it might be the last thing Meghan ever makes for Netflix. When the whole spectrum of the British press, from the Republican broadsheet to the Royal Fan Weekly, all reached the same judgment, that is not a review problem. That is a problem with the product. And here's the information that makes it all crystal clear. Their first documentary together, Harry and Meghan, which followed their decision to step back from royal life, is still the most watched debut in Netflix's history. That one information is the skeletal key to the whole narrative. Their subsequent endeavors, Heart of Invictus Polo and With Love Meghan, each got more and more tepid comments. If the message from the audience was written in the sky, you couldn't hear it any louder. The world doesn't give a damn about Meghan's lifestyle brand. The world is hungry for the royal wounds. Sussex has always sold just closeness to the crown and to Diana, and it has always been successful. Exactly why the pitch deck went for the deepest royal wound there is when the brunch economy cratered. The Netflix arrangement came up for renewal, and renewal wasn't a sure thing. The deal with Spotify was dead already. The lifestyle enterprise, American Riviera Orchard, wasn't garnering the traction it required. Royal critics say losing Netflix would be a huge blow, and one that would be very difficult to recover from. See what the Diana documentary actually was. This was not a passion project. It was a cry for help. The only card in the deck guaranteed to draw a global audience, because it was the only card printed with the one royal narrative bigger than their own out. And the man at Althorpe tore it up in 4 words. Let me give you a picture of what was truly going behind the surface of all this. Let's take the passion out of it for a minute and look at the assets. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties and gave up their HRH titles, they needed to create a business existence on something. What they possessed was renown with a sell-by date and one asset more bankable than all the others combined. Diana, her face, her myth dying. Business-wise, the Sussexes had been trading on a brand without a license. The genuine licensor, the keeper of the archive, the controller of the estate, the owner of the originals, was a 62-year-old man in Northamptonshire who apparently nobody in the Sussex operation had thought to approach. See the rise of the ledger. 2018 aquamarine ring at a wedding reception. First loan, received with thanks, that was family. And then the butterfly earrings, the watch by Cartier, the bangles, guaranteed to photo every time. 2021, the opera interview, the panorama architecture rebuilt from scratch, Diana's template reused, and then the Netflix docuseries. Her sorrow became their founding narrative. Diana as the rationale, the structure, the base. Then finally, 2026, a request for the actual vault, the journal, the home movie, Althorpe as a film set. The halo put on a new head. They began by stealing her jewelry. They ended by demanding her soul. Each withdrawal was more than the previous one. Not a single person was made without consulting the man who controls the account. And the last one skipped. That's the trouble with illegal withdrawals. They work great until the day you need the bank manager to sign off on a real loan. And it transpires the bank manager has been keeping an eye on every single transaction. Now we get to the part of the story that turns everything upside down. The development that most royal coverage has either missed completely or buried in a single paragraph. Everyone agrees that Charles Spencer didn't just decline the offer. It is said that he did not make his decision in a vacuum. Most royal observers have been utterly unaware of a relationship that sources close to the palace have been quietly detailing. The understanding between Diana's brother and Diana's eldest son. It's an open truth that Prince William has been privately livid for years over the commercialization of his mother's image. Understand William's position. He is the new king. Everything he does has consequences. He cannot make a worldwide headline about censorship and family warfare in the palace by publicly blocking his own brother's media projects. When the institution blocks something, it seems like the establishment protecting itself. But when Diana's own brother, the man who stood in Westminster Abbey and promised before 2 billion people to protect her boys, says a project is a joke, it is hardly institutional control. That is honor of the family. No one can twist it. There is no castle to blame for. One brother informing another brother just what he thinks of what is being done to their mother's memories. See the elegance of that? The one man free to say no is the man whose no can't be used as a weapon. William didn't have to do a thing, and I would submit to you that this is not so much coincidence as alignment. Two guardians of one memory coming to the same wall from opposite sides. Look at it this way: if two countries can't talk to each other without losing face, the message goes in through a back channel. A private individual, a seasoned statesman, a man who wears no uniform and has a foot on both sides. The envoy has no office and can express the unsayable precisely because of it. That is precisely the role Charles Spencer is playing in this family battle. He has public standing, blood links to both princes, a moral claim on Diana's legacy, and no constitutional position at all. They can't cancel Netflix without a scandal. William can't say no to Harry without a headline. But the Earl of Northamptonshire can tell everyone nay in 4 words before breakfast, and the only institution that loses is Montecito. And then the move no one saw coming. In a quiet but extraordinary move, it is understood that Charles Spencer wrote to Prince William asking the future king to speak out against the worsening crisis between Prince Harry and the royal family. And let me be clear before anyone mistakes this for a peace offering. This request for reconciliation, by all accounts, was not impassioned. That was strategic. Stability, the global prestige of the British crown. The contents, as reported, are remarkably lucid. The silence can't be forever. The world's media have turned Harry into a symbol of vulnerability. The soldier, the prince, the politician, no longer but a reactive figure, obsessed by the story of his wife. Charles Spencer reportedly cautioned that by sweeping Harry under the rug and responding to him with complete indifference, the royal family is providing the Sussexes an open microphone, allowing them to control the world narrative unchecked, as traditional royal ideals are mocked in real time. Read that over. Let it drop. Diana's brother, who famously stood at her burial and confronted the Windsors to their faces, is now apparently pressing the future king to defend the image of the throne. You want a single data point to measure how Harry and Meghan have reordered the loyalty of this family. There you go. Meanwhile, the deeper family break remains unmoved, not 1 inch. Recent reports have suggested the royal family is open to some type of reconciliation negotiations with Prince Harry, but remains exceedingly unwilling to reconcile with Meghan Markle. Weeks after Harry sent advisors to London to meet with King Charles's communications secretary, it became clear that the heart of the split boils down to one word: dependence. There is no. Meghan's fury is not the royal family's greatest fear, and I want you to sit with this because it is extraordinary. It's not her complaints, it's her content schedule. They are scared that each private chat they have with her would be the raw material for the next media enterprise. Every moment of truth, each family swap, every quiet phrase at dinner, all of it possibly filed, packed, and turned into a streaming product in 18 months. The same story indicates that Harry might ultimately wind up traveling to the United Kingdom alone. No to Meghan, without Archie and Lilibet, if he wants any relationship with what's left of his family. King Charles has kept a studied silence across the 5,000 miles that separate him and his youngest son, despite Harry apparently offering to share his diary dates with the family in a bid to show transparency. William and Catherine haven't spoken to the Sussexes for years. That is the legacy of this saga, not a documentary, no streaming deal, 2 brothers who cannot find a way back to each other, and a family at Althorpe watching with a fence still locked. I'll give both sides of this issue the proper weight before you take a position. On the one hand, people who support Charles Spencer and Prince William believe that Diana's narrative has been repeated and retold over thousands of hours of documentary footage over the past 30 years. That she's turning her remembrance into a content pipeline risks trivializing the emotional weight of her death. That the 30th anniversary should be a time for personal reflection, not a premiere with a marketing plan and a Montecito production credit attached. On the other side, there's a case to be made by Harry's defenders that deserves a proper hearing. Diana in the same way both her sons. Harry carries a dimension of the historical record that no one alive can give, what being her kid was really like, to hold her hand in hospital wards and homeless shelters. To lose her at 15 and to carry that loss in the full view of the public for the rest of your life, he can never lose that perspective. No one ought to. But attempt to be in both sets of shoes before you decide. William here, the worst thing that happened to you as a kid is your own brother's production partners making it a content drop with a premiere date and a Netflix algorithm. You never consented to your sadness being a product. This wasn't your mom's death you signed off on as a launch event. And yet here it is being packaged and pushed in boardrooms you weren't invited to by people who will profit from the worst day of your life. Now you are Harry. They tell you that the narrative of your own mother taking you to homeless shelters on purpose to teach you what your privilege was for is somehow not yours to share. You witnessed her death. The whole world saw you walk behind her casket when you were 13. You lugged that pain through your entire adult life, through wars, through scandals, through the very public unraveling of your position inside a family that appeared incapable of realizing how broken everything had become. And now you are informed that even your memories have to be approved by somebody else. And both of those spots stung. Both are people, both are true at the same time, and the uncomfortable truth is that this dispute may never be settled since it is not truly about a documentary. It is a dispute over ownership. Who gets to tell a tale when that story belongs in diverse and equally genuine ways to more than one person? If you want a villain in this scenario, the evil does not reside in Althorpe or Montecito or Kensington Palace. It exists in the commercial machinery that attends the grief. The machine that scans a mother's handwritten journals and estimates their streaming worth. The program that converts a family's worst years into a data point. A record-breaking platform documentary. The business that has spent 30 years constructing an economy on Diana's grief, and then is astonished when the people closest to her tragedy seek a seat at the table. That is what Charles Spencer has been battling for. 28 peaceful years, no news releases, no acclaim. What is left is the question of whether it is ever ethical to spend Diana's legacy as currency, even by her own son. Did Charles Spencer do the right thing by closing the vault? Or does Harry have a claim that no gatekeeper, however principled, can override? Whatever you decide, take this cue with you. Diana was used by a man with falsified papers and a camera. Her brother has decided she's not going to be taken advantage of again by a man with a streaming deal and a rescue plan. The vault in Althorpe remains sealed. Perhaps the most powerful comment anyone affiliated with Diana has made in 30 years. This isn't a documentary, not an interview, not a nicely crafted statement from the press. Just a barred fence and a man who refuses to turn pain into content. The quiet is the loudest thing in the room in a media landscape that is predicated largely on doing just that.